We'd like to see blockchain and Web3 move from theory to actual practice. And, like I mentioned before, a lot of people talk about financial inclusion for Africa, for their bank, but what are the use cases?
Hi everyone, I am super excited to have the co-founder and CEO of Kotani Pay, Felix Macharia, on this episode of NEWFORUM. Kotani Pay is a blockchain on-ramp, off-ramp service that offers access to blockchain financial services to SMS phone users in Africa. Felix has worked in a variety of roles in the African blockchain space since 2016, including as a researcher for the Institute of Blockchain Studies, Co-Trustee of the African Digital Asset Framework, and co-founder of proof-of-stake node validator EOS Nairobi. We'll hear more about the founding story of Kotani Pay and everything they're up to shortly. NEWFORUM, the community podcast that invites purpose-driven visionaries, creators, developers, and investors to spark accessible conversations on the topics of crypto, the metaverse, NFT, and everything Web3, is honored to have Felix Macharia on today's episode. Hey, Felix, I cannot wait to begin the conversation with you.
Thank you, Salimi. Glad to be here.
Amazing. So I'm really curious to hear about the founding story. Like, what inspired you to start this amazing project? And if you could tell me a little bit more about yourself and maybe your team as well.
Yes. So I'm born and raised in Kenya. Kenya is in eastern part of Africa, and it's very much known for the innovation that it's known for is mobile money. Biggest brand here being M-Pesa. So mobile money is your SIM card is basically your bank account, and you can send money, store money on your SIM card, send money as easy as you send a text message, right? So we basically leapfrogged all these other technologies from bank to Visa and MasterCard, and most people have bank accounts on their phones. So I initially got into the blockchain space back in 2016. I had read a book on blockchain, The Blueprint for the New Economy by Melanie Swan. She had a couple of researchers around the globe, except in Africa. So I volunteered into her institute, the Institute for Blockchain Studies. I was studying a lot of the ERC20 tokens on Ethereum and possible use cases in Africa. Then progressively got into node validation. So what node validation basically is you process transactions for blockchains. And in this case, we are dealing with proof of stake blockchains. I think the Ethereum merge is in the next 2 days. They are transitioning to a proof of stake consensus algorithm. So at the time, it was very new in the space, and we're the only African validator. Started on the EOS blockchain, which had something called dedicated proof of stake. Progressively went on to provide the same services on Icon and other blockchains. Part of our work there was you need to educate communities on what blockchains are, what are smart contracts, what are private keys, what are public keys. And it was very clear to us that the technology, whereas it has benefits for people in Africa, was completely disconnected from the payment channels that people were using. So that if you're looking at the blockchain today, it provides security, right? You can store your funds on chain, and as long as you have the private key, no one can access those funds. It's permissionless. You don't need any form of permission from anyone to access it as long as you have an internet connection. You can use it for transfer of value, and this transfer of value is very affordable. So if you're looking at a $5 transaction on, let's say, Western Union, to Africa, it's $3 fees. $5 transaction, $3 fees. PayPal, $1.33. On a blockchain, like the Silo blockchain, it's something like 5 cents. So it's very affordable if you're moving away from proof of work to proof of stake. It's very affordable to transfer value. So it was very clear to us these benefits that the blockchain offers, but completely disconnected from payment channels. So we set out and perhaps I'll talk a bit more about the work we do, but we set out to connect African users to the blockchain, and progressively this has very much become a mandate to connect them to Web3 and some of the innovations on Web3.
Wow, incredible. I really feel proud to be having this interview with you, because we don't have so many people represent in Africa when it comes to blockchain. So I feel really honored, and thank you for setting the example for the younger generation to follow. I'm curious to know, like, what are some of the challenges that you face when it comes to accessing blockchain in, let's just say, in Kenya, or maybe you can make it like a little bit broader in Africa, both from the user interface, device perspective, and also a payment perspective.
And that's a great question, because that's where the pain points actually are, right? So we, like I said before, a lot of Africans today use their mobile phones for financial services. So from a device perspective, because it's several layers of difficulty when you're dealing with Web3, from a device perspective, a lot of Africans still use first generation phones. If you remember the 2001, 2002 phones before the iPhone, the push button phones from Motorola and Nokia, those are very much used in Africa still. So like we have 57% of Africans who still use those phones. They're called feature phones or push button phones. And the thing about those phones is they don't have access to the internet. So they have access to the local telecom services or telcos, but they don't have access to the internet. So most of the people who are accessing financial services will usually do it through SMS, and they usually do it through an SMS technology called USSE. So if you Google USSE in line with, for example, payments, you'll find a lot of content same. The second challenge is the internet access aspect. And this affects a broader demographic here in Africa. So, and I understand it's not even just an African problem. Even in rural America and most of these other places, internet access is not that ubiquitous. So we have 60% or so of Africans who still don't have access to the internet, or even if they do, it's still too expensive for them. So you're talking about $5 for a GB, 1 GB in some of these countries where people live under $3 a day or something. So internet access is the second challenge. The third challenge is the complication or the learning curve that comes with blockchain. So you need to know private keys, public keys, smart contracts, all those things. That's not going to fly with a farmer in Togo or an informal worker in Kenya. And finally, the other one is the local payment channels. So we don't have Visa and MasterCard. Every country in Africa has its own payment channel, and it has its own payment preference. In fact, I would say payment preferences are, there's much about culture than anything else. So if you go to South Africa, for example, Visa and MasterCard predominate, bank accounts predominate. If you go to Nigeria, it's banks and cash. If you come to Kenya and Ghana, it's mobile money, and this changes. So it's very fragmented. We have about 55 countries now. So when we're thinking about connecting users to the blockchain, we had to think about the problem on multiple levels. So for one, we needed to meet them at the point where they are. So if I'm a feature phone user, if I'm a push button phone user, how can I create a blockchain account from that phone? And so what we did is we came up with a technology stack. And that's what Kotani Pay basically is, for us to break it down to the simplest level. It's just a technology stack that connects local technologies to blockchains. So I can key in an SMS code on my phone, and it automatically creates a blockchain wallet for me on a blockchain protocol. The funds that I receive and the funds that I store actually stored on chain. They are stored on a blockchain protocol. I'm using an SMS interface to connect to this blockchain protocol. So that's number one. So whether I have internet or not, whether I have a feature phone or not, I can get a blockchain account. That's Kotani Pay's technology. And that's what makes it very. Additionally, we also connect it to local payment channels. And this is where the on-ramp and off-ramp need comes in. So on-ramp means I'm moving from local currency, and we have 55 local currencies in Africa. I'm moving from local currency to a blockchain asset. So if you're in Kenya, you're using the Kenya shilling. I'm moving from Kenya shilling to a blockchain asset. Off-ramp means I'm moving from a blockchain asset to Kenya shilling. So from a blockchain asset to local currency, basically. So the other aspect of Kotani Pay's technology is that it's connected to M-Pesa in Kenya. It's connected to MTN mobile money in Ghana. We basically connect to the most ubiquitous local payment channels in various jurisdictions. And then the way we add value to Web3 startups like DeFi wallets and exchanges and so on is that we give you a single API. You connect to that API, and by connecting to that API, it gives you access to all these countries where we like. So on one side, we give end users access to the blockchain, despite the technology they're using, despite the devices they're using. And on the other side, we give DeFi wallets or Web3 startups access to users in Africa through a single API.
Who are like your target audience, or so far, who are the people within your community like that are using the product?
Our main customers are usually Web3 startups, and they're Web3 startups that are focused on African use cases. And I'll give you, maybe 2 or 3 examples. So one is, there are many people today who believe that universal basic income is a way to go. So if you have people who are suffering from absolute poverty, you can think, for example, about a refugee who has been torn away from their family. They're basically in a new country, they don't have access to their funds and so on and so forth. They are completely absolute poverty, that kind of situation. We have Web3 startups today, like Impact Market, that collect funds from crypto token holders, around the world. And then they channel these funds to blockchain wallets belonging to refugees, right? So we have enabled 5,000 or so refugees here in Kenya, 2,000 or so refugees in Ghana. To date, we have done something like 327,000 transfers on the blockchain. These are transfers to refugees because they claim on a daily basis and then they cash out. So what enables these refugees to receive these funds is, remember, they're using old generation devices. So they receive those funds on their blockchain wallets. They check the balance. They see, I have this enough balance, and they cash out to their local currencies, and they can use that. And to some extent, what excites me about this the most is a lot of these users are actually women, and a lot of them are using these funds to establish even businesses within the camps where they are. They start small businesses and they're able to fend for their family. So that's on the impact side, very exciting for us at Kotani. We also have, beyond the humanitarian use cases, we also have use cases that promote local economies in Africa. So one very good use case is digital work. Most of the populations in Africa are very young, median ages between 15 to 29 in most countries. Median ages in the West, we are looking at 40 to 50. The likes of Germany and Japan. So we have a lot of youth who are not employed, but they can get work on the internet. And most of these youth, by the way, have smartphones. So they actually have smartphones and actually have access to the internet. We have partnered with several organizations, including a Web3 startup called Kosali. Kosali sources for jobs from the likes of Uber and Airbnb. And these are mostly image data annotation jobs. So if you think about computer algorithms, the ones that they want to put into cars, so that a car can identify this is a cat, this is the road, this is the dog, and so on and so forth. You need to feed those algorithms with billions of images. And those images need to be labeled so that that algorithm can identify that image. You can't do this in the West affordably, because if you do it in Toronto or the US, you're looking at a minimum wage. But you can do it in frontier markets. And in most of these frontier markets, that $3-5 transaction makes a whole lot of difference for most of these communities, right? So Kosali takes these jobs, pushes them through a mobile app to the end users. The end users annotate data, right? So they just label the images, then they get paid in crypto. The reason why they get paid in crypto is because crypto is actually the cheapest way to pay them. Like the particular analogy I gave of the $5 transaction. These are 5-cent fee transaction, basically, if you're using some of these proof of stake blockchains. So when I get paid, I can cash out to my local currency, and I basically have a job. And then finally, we have also enabled lending use cases. So lending use cases have mostly been targeted for the small and medium enterprises. So for example, we have worked with an organization called Pesesha. I think they did something like an $11 million round just last month. Pesesha is a lending platform. They have lenders on one side and they have small and medium enterprises on the other. And they connect these two. For a very long time, they were sourcing for funds from banks and microfinance institutions. These funds come at an expensive rate, looking at like 15% interest rate. And then they add maybe the 5%, it gets to 20% for the end. So very expensive. They started sourcing for blockchain liquidity from blockchain protocols. And the interest rate they were getting was like 4%. Because if you're using a DeFi pool, and this is the purpose of a decentralized finance pool anyway, is to reduce the cost. So you get 4%. Even if you add your 2%, you're giving the end user 6% kind of loan. And they usually have very good retention rates from the small enterprises at the end. This is in addition to all the other users who want to connect to, let's say, crypto exchanges, who want to connect to NFT marketplaces, who want to connect to DeFi protocols. So we mainly view ourselves as an infrastructure business. We offer our infrastructure to Web3 startups across the board and help them to connect to mainstream users.
I think that's really great. I was just thinking about, I had this conversation with the Nigerian, he's a creator, and he told me that they have a lot of challenges when it comes to receiving crypto and all of that. So they pretty much have to do it through peer-to-peer trading transactions. Yeah. And I know that like this is also something that crypto investors, I guess, don't really like. And I want to know your perspective on that. And maybe will Kotani Pay, I don't know, like bridge this gap maybe in the future where it will be kind of easier for just an individual to also do these type of transactions through your technology?
So in the case of crypto exchanges, that's actually our primary focus, right? So like Binance is doing very well in Africa. OKX is doing very well in Africa and a couple of others. Coinbase is yet to get to a point where it actually has penetration. But the reason why we have gone peer-to-peer is because of that infrastructure problem. There is a gap in the infrastructure. So that if I have Bitcoin, I'll only sell it to an end user on the Binance marketplace, but it will be peer-to-peer. So that takes time because the user on the other side has to accept, he has to send me money, and then after he sends me money, I have to release the Bitcoin or the USDT I have. So it's not a very efficient process. So a lot of crypto exchanges now are looking at, can we just have a single way for people to buy in and buy out of cryptocurrencies? And that's via APIs. The challenge for that is you need connections to local payment channels. You probably need to be regulated in the various countries where you are because you're touching fiat. So you have to look at know your customer and AML kind of relations and so on. And so we are taking this headache out of the process for DeFi wallets and exchanges. We don't want you to be thinking about these problems too much. We just want to give you a single API and then we handle everything else from KYC, AML, and so on. And the KYC is so easy to use. So like in the case of the farmer, they're so used to using the SMS interface. So they'll just key in their name on the SMS interface, they'll key in their identification number, and we'll counter check. And once we have counter check, we give them an account and they can then proceed. So it's not a complex thing for an end user. If you're a smartphone user, perhaps we'll even take your images and so on, but it's also not a complex problem. So we are looking at that opportunity around peer-to-peer. Peer-to-peer dominates African cryptocurrency transactions today, but it is not the way to scale to mainstream because it requires a lot of learning. And you will see what peer-to-peer today is mostly with the traders. So a lot of the traders are the ones that understand peer-to-peer. But if you want everyone else to be on board, then we need just simple ways for us to buy and even sell the digital assets we hold.
Everyone watching, we have Felix here, but there's like a power team behind the scene supporting, and that makes me think about, will Kotani Pay become a DAO in the future, and why will this be important, and what could be some of the hurdles?
Yes, so we view this sort of like as our next step, in the growth plan. So right now we are very much focused on connecting to as many local payment channels as possible. I said before, we are live in Kenya, Ghana, Zambia. We want to be live in at least 20 African countries by the end of it all. So it's a massive undertaking. It requires a lot of focus. And to some extent, it also requires an LLC to be doing that work. But looking forward, we would like to decentralize this infrastructure. And there are a couple of reasons why. One is we will never have enough liquidity to solve this problem. So if you look at, for example, what we're doing right now, we maintain both local currency pools and stablecoin pools. If a user wants to cash out, let's say I want to move from Avalanche network or the EOS network or the Ethereum network, I will be exchanging my Ethereum with Kotani. This is what happens in the background. And Kotani Pay will be giving me its fiat because I want to get into Kenya shillings or Nigerian naira or like any of these other currencies. So Kotani Pay has to maintain fiat pools locally and stablecoin pools. And we are not that big, and we cannot maintain these crazy amounts or these crazy pools. It makes sense for us to go decentralized, because in that case, then we can get a community to contribute to the pools. So that if I'm in Nigeria, I contribute to a Nigerian naira USDT pool, and from that pool I can draw fees. Similarly to what we do now with Kotani Pay, we charge fees for cash in, cash out. We can also have the same fees, but these fees go to the liquidity providers. And of course, they're liquidity takers. So the liquidity takers pay the fees and the liquidity providers receive the fees. And in order to be very effective at this, you need to establish a governance model, lead a way for community to govern itself. And that's where the DAO comes in. So for us to really scale to the extent that Africans all over Africa in the 50 or so countries can cash in, cash out easily, Kotani Pay needs to move or progress more towards a foundation kind of structure where we only just focus on technology, but have community. And community does liquidity provision and liquidity taking based on which side of the equation you are on. And the fees, instead of going to a centralized entity like Kotani. Luckily for us, this has already been established. There are a lot of DeFi protocols that have been tested. There are a lot of staking pools today, even on Ethereum, that are having this concept on a daily basis. So for us, that's why DAO. That's the next step of growth. In terms of challenges, of course, like I mentioned before, because you're dealing with fiat, there's that aspect of regulation. But I believe that can be handled at the foundation level. Basically, having a layer, a decentralized identity layer that provides KYC AML for this particular protocol. If you think about it, if we are in a user has a Kotani Pay wallet in Kenya, for example, where you are, Slovakia, and another user has a Kotani Pay wallet in Ghana, these two users can actually interact on the Kotani Pay network. So by the end of the day, Kotani Pay can actually be a protocol, and users can be sending value across. It's only that it's a protocol that's connected very much to the base, sort of the base local payment channel. So for us, it makes sense that that's the next progression in terms of where we have to go.
I'm also thinking about like the individuals within that community, like in terms of like voting, decision making. How will that pan out? Because currently, obviously, Kotani Pay is mostly following the more centralized kind of like way of management, where you are the founder, you're the CEO, and so there's someone or this one person that makes decisions in a sense. But when it, this whole concept of a DAO, like working with all these diverse people with amazing ideas, and everybody, wants to voice out something and be heard. How do you foresee this being managed within a DAO?
Yeah, there's a very interesting article by Chris Dixon of Andreessen Horowitz, A16Z. They're now a primary investor in the crypto space, and they talk about progressive decentralization. So this article just talks about how companies can move from centralized structures slowly to decentralized structures. And there are certain milestones to achieve in every stage of this process. So that, for example, at the centralization stage, what we want to do is establish product market fit, which is what we are doing right now with Kotani. Year to date, we have processed $4 million, through the various use cases that we're enabling here in Africa. we are getting to a point where we have so many companies, DeFi wallets, crypto exchanges that want to connect to us, that our tech team is getting overwhelmed. So that shows you we're getting to product market fit. And from product market fit, you can move towards engaging the first sort of like cohort of community builders. The way we are looking at that is we want to engage developers first. So through our APIs, we're making our APIs open source and saying, if you're an African developer or if you're a blockchain developer, these are our APIs. Develop anything you want to do on the APIs. And, somewhere along the way, we'll be giving grants and enabling this community to contribute. And based on your contribution, you can then be awarded grants. And then down the line, I think it's Q1 or Q2 of next year, we want to release a DAO white paper, as well as have a token, at least a testnet tokens for users. And this will allow then people who have liquidity in USDT or in local currency to contribute to our current liquidity. So our current liquidity is held by Kotani Pay. We want to move away from that to an escrow that's shared by community, and people can contribute liquidity to that network. And then finally release sort of like a mainnet version of the same that allows now liquidity providers and liquidity takers to interact with each other on chain. So it's very progressive in terms of how we're looking at it. Definitely beyond just developers, liquidity providers, and liquidity takers, we're also looking at other ways in which community can contribute. So are there articles you can write about use cases that you think, Kotani Pay's on-ramp, off-ramp enables? Are there marketing gigs that you can do, or ambassador programs that you can carry out in universities and so on, just to bring people up to date these are the use cases that are enabled on the blockchain. And of course, all these people are awarded using blockchain tokens. We want to give power to the people who contribute the most, and this will be the developers and liquidity providers. So they probably will earn a lot more tokens in terms of the incentivization system. How you go about running the DAO and the voting is token holders will vote for DAO custodians. So it's quite possible that we'll have a group of independent DAO custodians, probably about 15 of them, that are voted for by community, and they will be responsible for approving a lot of these proposals. That's one route we can go. The other route we can go is just have token holders vote for certain proposals. And as long as a proposal gets to like 60% or 50+1, then it passes and is implemented at the protocol layer. So those are sort of like the governance aspects of the DAO.
Looking forward to when it happens, because it sounds like you guys are pretty close. And also, I mean, so far, you guys have really your crypto use cases. I think your technology is enabling. It's really very interesting and very diverse. Also, Kotani Pay is part of the Newmoon Accelerator, and Newmoon Accelerator is part of the New Foundation ecosystem, which powers developers and founders building the cultural layer of the open metaverse stack by providing technical assistance, monitoring connection to a fast-growing community. And I'm really curious to hear more about it. Like, what are you guys building on the new coin protocol, and how has the experience been like so far?
What attracted us to Newmoon was the fact that we had an accelerator for DAOs. As we were thinking about governance and how to establish governance, there are not so many sandboxes or places where you experiment with others and even get advice on how to build a DAO. Right? This was a first place where we could get advice on tokenomics, the legal aspects of DAOs, how to build communities on DAOs, how to do marketing for Web3. There was a lot of content that was directed towards DAO and DAO building. And not only content, but also technology. So that, for example, you can create sub-DAOs under the main Newmoon DAO. And for us, that was interesting because it increases also that aspect of interoperability.
Yes.
We don't want the Kotani Pay community to be an isolated community. We want it to be connected to other NFT marketplaces, metaverse communities around the world. So that's what really attracted us. We had the content side of things, and we also had the technology side of things. And for the technology side of things, it was also very simple to integrate to. So by the SDK, for example, it's easy for any developer to integrate to that particular technology. Not very hard to do. So that's what excites us the most about it. So we'll be launching on the testnet. We'll be releasing the DAO on Coin. And we're also thinking of bridging. So we might also be quite the contributors on Newmoon in terms of bridging it to other blockchains where we already have activity like CELO and Avalanche. So I'm not making any promises, but like that's one of the things that we are actively considering in terms of our contribution to the community.
Very nice. No promises. But everything is in progress. And I'm also curious to know, what are your plans maybe for the next 6 to 12 months? What should we expect from Kotani Pay?
So the immediate plans are expansion to 4 new countries. So right now, Kenya, Ghana, Zambia. We're looking to expand to South Africa, Botswana, Senegal, and there's another one, I think it's Tanzania, Uganda. And then we, on the Newmoon Accelerator program, we're looking to launch the DAO testnet. We're looking to have some of these tests being done on the voting of proposals, on the voting of custodians. And then we are also looking to launch our DeFi app called Kotani Swap that will allow liquidity providers and liquidity takers to interact with each other. And the other thing I didn't mention is when you interact, actually when you're a liquidity provider, when you're a liquidity taker, you actually earn governance tokens. And that's what gives you then a say in the Kotani Pay DAO. And then we, down the line, maybe in about 6 to 8 months' time, we're looking to launch a token and have this decentralized infrastructure working. So those are our immediate next steps.
It looks like you guys are working really hard, and I'm, again, like I said before, I'm just really, really excited for what you're doing, what you're building, and that leads me to my final question. What would you like to see change in Africa when it comes to blockchain, crypto, and like all of these, I guess, amazing emerging technologies?
And, this brings me to even our work and our mission and why we're doing what we're doing. We'd like to see blockchain and Web3 move from theory to actual practice. And, like I mentioned before, a lot of people talk about financial inclusion for Africa, for their bank, but what are the use cases on the ground? So we enable these use cases. If you are trying to find out about what we do, there's a Forbes article on what we have done. There's a TechCrunch article on what we have done. There's a Business Insider article on what we have done. So these are actual use cases that are happening on the ground. We would like to see more of that. We actually welcome more competitors. We'd like to see more on-ramp, off-ramps. We'd like to see more DAOs similar to Kotani Pay, because that's how you get even improvements, and these improvements happen faster. We would like to see more Africans benefit from Web3 and the metaverse. So whether it's DeFi or NFT marketplaces, we have artists here in Africa. We'd like to see them connected and benefiting from these global trends. So that for us is our desire.
It's an amazing desire, and I think it would be really nice for maybe young Africans who want to get into tech, right, to kind of hear a little bit about how it started. You can just maybe summarize it a little bit, because you never know who you'll be inspiring.
Yeah. So I was born in a relatively urban or peri-urban community, and I had my first interaction with a computer when I was 10 years old. And these were the old Apple, it was Apple II computers. And then had my first interaction with the internet, I think around age 16. And then had my first phone around age 17, 18. So it's not like it's not like I'm very old. I'm very new to this, all these technology aspects. The only aspect that perhaps has helped me very much is curiosity and wanting to learn more. So for any African entrepreneur who's looking to engage in the space, I'll say just read, like find content on DeFi. And there's a lot of good content out there, a lot of good YouTube channels and articles and so on. Just read, join community. So join, for example, like the Newmoon Telegram community. Join as many Discord communities that you can join, because just an app download and you can participate in some of these communities, and you never really know what problem you will be solving by the end. But the best way to do it is just get connected and get to learn more.
Thank you. Where can everyone listening to you today find you on your social platform?
Yes, so can connect with us on at Kotani Pay on Twitter. At Felix Macharia is also another option on Twitter. I'm also Felix Macharia on LinkedIn, and we have Kotani Pay Telegram community. In case you feel you need to send an email, it's just felix@kotanipay.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Felix. This was very inspiring conversation, and I enjoyed it so much. It was really nice to hear about all this like progress and everything happening. And thank you, the team behind behind the scene who are here supporting our conversation. And thank you all so much for being a part of today's forum. If you want to get more involved in our community, make sure to follow us on our social platforms. Twitter is NEWFORUM_NCO, and we're NEWFORUM.io or NEWLife.io. You can also join our Discord community to connect with our guests. You'll find the link in the description, as well as Felix's link, and like all the links will be in the description. If you also want to learn more about the New Foundation ecosystem, go to newcoin.org. And as always, take a moment to share, like, and subscribe to our channel. And I will see you in the next episode. Thank you.